I mean, yeah, a lot of people want instant gratification, and I think it's hard to put in effort over a long time to wait for the payoff for whatever you're doing. I think a lot of people aren't willing to put that in, not knowing, especially when you don't know, right? If you knew 100%, oh, this will do really well, then maybe you would put the effort in. But when you don't know, and it's a challenge, I mean, I think it was 4 times that we had no money left and I'd maxed out my credit cards completely, pay myself and to pay everybody. You know, and then we got offered money by sort of plant-based companies to sponsor, and we said we don't want any of that money because even though you wouldn't influence us to make a different film, people would say that you did, right? So it was challenging at times when we'd run out of money. We just kept pushing through and got it done.
In a world filled with dietary confusion, what does it take to cut through the noise and find the truth? Hey there, Health Feast listeners. Dr. Rock here. And today I am beyond excited to welcome a true hero in the plant-based world, Mr. James Wilks. James is a former MMA fighter, elite special forces trainer, and the producer and star of the groundbreaking documentary, your favorite and mine, The Game Changers. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, the film chronicles James's recovery from severe knee injuries and really challenges long-standing myths about meat, strength, and athletic performance, showcasing elite athletes and visionary researchers and doctors and scientists who reveal the powerful benefits of plant-based eating. It's really hard to encapsulate the impact that The Game Changers has had on the conversation around health and plant-based eating. Since its release in 2018, the film has been viewed by over 200 million people worldwide, making it likely the most watched documentary of all time. Recognizing this wide-reaching impact, Men's Health ranked James Wilks number 3 on their list of the 13 most influential men in health and fitness. This film has likely done more to shift public opinion on plant-based eating than any other single entity that I can think of. It sparked what is known as the game changer effect, which is the significant shift in the conversation about plant-based nutrition. I personally have referred countless patients and friends and family members to watch the movie, and I've witnessed its power in changing minds and behaviors. In our conversation today, we delve into this incredible journey of making the Game Changers. James shares how his personal injury led him to research optimal nutrition and then really evolved into a mission to uncover the truth about human health and diet. He talks about the challenges of filming, funding, and ultimately producing a documentary with such monumental impact. We also touch on the exciting announced sequel, The Game Changers 2. Trust me, you don't want to miss his insights on this new project. James also discusses his ongoing battle against misinformation in the industry, particularly efforts funded by the meat industry to undermine plant-based diets. He shares his thoughts on the carnivore diet, which is a diet that consists only of meat. And we talk about the crucial role of social media in both spreading information and misinformation. Additionally, we explore the innovative work behind FWT TA. FWT TA is James's plant-based protein company. I'm actually someone who uses FWT TA most days of the week, and so I can attest to its quality and taste. We talk about all the reasons why I'm in love with it in the episode, so I won't go through those now. But James also offers a discount for our listeners, and the details of that can be found in the show notes. Stick around to the end of the episode because James shares what he would bring to our proverbial health feast, that mindset tip or life philosophy that we ask all our guests to share. James has a pretty awesome answer, so I think you're going to want to hear that. So, whether you're on a walk, on your commute, winding down your day in your jammies, or maybe you just watched The Game Changers, this episode is the perfect companion. Join me as I dive into a conversation with James Wilks and uncover the powerful strategies and insights that made The Game Changers a global phenomenon. So let's do the show.
Is this actually happening?
James Wilks, welcome to the Health Feast. It's such a pleasure, privilege to have you here.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Okay, so Poe couldn't be here today. He really sends his regrets, and he told me he wanted me to ask some specific things. So I'll bring that up later. So yeah, the Health Feast is all about how good health can feel good. James, I met you, and you meet so many people. So I don't know if you remember, but this was in 2018. You came to the annual Lifestyle Medicine Conference in Indianapolis to screen the movie, the Game Changers movie. And I have to tell you, there like so many people in lifestyle medicine are totally unexposed to the world of MMA and UFC fighting. So those scenes you showed, I was looking around and there were all these like family practice doctors from like the Midwest, and they were like, "Oh my God, his face is so bloody!" Like, but I was sitting in the audience. I was getting certified that year. I had started eating plant-based maybe 2 years before that. I didn't really exercise much my whole life. And I saw that movie. And so for me, it was like this catalyst. It was like, whoa, like now I'm eating a diet that supports people to do things like that.
Right.
I think I could probably do something. And so around that time, I joined a small gym by my house. I started lifting weights. I started doing these obstacle course races. And it's hard to say like how that movie inspired me. I wanted to first start with that, to just give you that gratitude, that thank you, because your movie, it's been seen by over 200 million people now worldwide. And I think about that I'm one person who saw that movie, and the ripple effect just in my life, the way it affected me, and then how it affected how I counsel patients. You know, I get every one of my patients on strength training now. I mean, the science is there, but I wouldn't be such a big advocate for it if I didn't start doing it in my life. And I think about that, about all the people I'm impacting who are then impacting their families and their lives, and this ripple effect, this butterfly effect that your movie has caused, the game changers effect. I believe there's a term for it too.
Yeah, some people are using that term.
Did you ever expect this? I just want to start there. Like when you had, I'm sure, this idea, and I want to ask you about that too. Where did this, like, to research it is one thing, but to make it into a movie is another thing.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I did think we were going to make a very widely viewed documentary. But the reason, I really wanted to make it is when I got injured, as you know in the film, I tore ligaments in both of my knees, started researching nutrition for optimal recovery, reading the peer-reviewed science, came across that study about the Roman gladiators where the archaeologists unearthed over 5,000 gladiator bones and strontium analysis and radioisotope analysis. Yeah, and they were eating predominantly plants. I thought, well, that can't be true because you need meat for muscle and dairy for bones. Because all of my sort of nutrition education had come from, Muscle and Fitness magazine or some fitness blogs, and I hadn't really dug into any of the scientific literature before. So I thought, well, that can't be true. So that's when I sort of previously had done this search for truth in combat. Bruce Lee would say, research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own. And then I sort of shifted that sort of same mindset to the search for truth in nutrition. And when I started reading some of the literature and realizing that I'd been sort of led a lie my whole life, led to believe a lie my whole life, I woke up at 2 a.m. one morning. I said, I've got to tell everybody about this. So the only way to do that is to make a documentary. And so that's sort of, and I was still early in my journey then. And I think I just started trying plant-based to see how it goes. And, I hadn't gone fully plant-based, but I was trying at the time. And then I started finding these athletes that were doing it. So there was sort of some anecdotal evidence, but that wasn't enough. And then I started really getting into it.
So who were the first friends you phoned? Like, because obviously this was a colossal effort and so many people came together. Like, I'm curious, like, you recreate in the movie as if it's happening, right? And you pieced it together. So
some of the footage was actually in real time. Some was shot on a cell phone and then sort of upgraded. Some of it was shot super early on in the journey. And then some of the stories were sort of shot later on.
So you knew, even early on, you were like, I need to be capturing this because this is going to become part of...
Well, as I said, I thought at the very least, very early on, I'll put it out as something on YouTube for free, I called the director of photography from the Ultimate Fighter TV show. and said, hey, what camera should I buy? I don't have much money and to buy it, but do this. But he said, well, he gave me the type of camera. So I went onto Craigslist and bought a camera.
Wow.
Back then it was like there were little tapes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your injury was in 2011. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long journey getting this made. And so, yeah, I shot some stuff early on that, and then eventually we shot a little bit on cell phone. So some of the stuff made it into the documentary, but then things started ramping up, and we got proper camera crew.
And you were friends with Nate Diaz. I'm sure you still are. Well, you knew he was plant-based. Like, who were the first athletes that you...
I didn't know back then early on that he was plant-based. I'd competed against him before, and I'd met him at UFC. It's not like we're close friends or whatever, but so I knew of him and we'd met, and competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament years and years ago, actually. It was very early on. He was a lot, like, the skill difference at that time was pretty significant. I think I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu at the time. It was just a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I started researching. I think, some of the first people I saw were like Scott Jurek when I started researching it, the ultra distance runner, Patrick Boomian, the strongman, carrying the heaviest weight ever carried by a human being over 10 meters. So those are the types of people that I saw early on. I thought, okay, we got endurance there, really long distances. And I thought, okay, well, but what about strength? Then I started seeing, Patrick and some of these other people.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, so this isn't enough to convince me, but that set me on this sort of search for truth in nutrition, which then we started filming more, interviewing the head of nutrition at Harvard, the head of anthropology at Harvard, the president of American College of Cardiology, and all of these experts. So.
We recently had David Goldman on the podcast, actually. Yeah. How did you... we didn't ask him this. How did you guys connect initially?
We were just searching for people to help make sure the science was robust, and I came across David. And at the time, he was at True North Health, which is sort of a fasting place to get people, helping them with their diabetes and their obesity. And then they sort of shift them after the fasting onto a plant-based diet for health. And so we sort of reached out to him, and he was excited by the project, because he's got a double master's degree in exercise physiology and nutrition, and he's sort of athletic and athletic himself. Very smart guy. And so we brought him on as chief science advisor for the Game Changers.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, he's very smart and just so he's so thoughtful. He connects like dots and pieces together in a way that probably has been remarkable for the film. Yeah. Okay. So this is sort of coming together. What point, do you connect with James Cameron? Like, how does it become like I'm shooting cell phone footage and buying a camera on Craigslist to...
Yeah. We originally shot some stuff in 2013 with producer director from Forks Over Knives, which is a fantastic film in terms of the information, but the quality of the footage wasn't the greatest. And we started, filming these people, and there were some really interesting stories. So we felt we needed a powerful storyteller. And so in 2014, we sort of put it on hold to put together a really top-notch crew. And that's where we got Luis Zahoyos, who previously had the most award-winning documentary of all time in The Cove, about the dolphins and Tai Chi Japan and so forth. And so we connected with him. And then from there, it sort of snowballed a little bit. We'd also connected with Rick Esselstyn, who, of course, was in Forks Over Knives, had a connection to James Cameron, and thought that he might be interested in taking a look. And this sort of real meat myth was also on James Cameron's mind. And so he was a big supporter.
Wow. Synchronicity. And a lot of you talked to the right people and the right people came into your life. And can I just say, you knew from the very beginning that a lot of people were going to see this.
When I very first started, I thought, I want to make a really big documentary, but at the very least, this footage on this used camera from Craigslist will go on to YouTube. And then early on, Joseph Pace got involved, who's been plant-based for 30 years, done a lot of research and written some papers. And then once he got involved, he had some writing experience for film, not in documentary, but in film. And so he got involved. And that early on, we were like, okay, let's make the most viewed documentary of all time. So we even exceeded our own expectations.
And it was a 7 year, almost 7 year project. That's a very long timeline. I feel like in society right now, everybody wants I want my Amazon shipment tomorrow. I want it today. What do you mean I have to wait till tomorrow? There is a patience and a mindset. Can you talk about that? Of creating something slowly over
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of people want instant gratification, and I think it's hard to put in effort over a long time to wait for the payoff for whatever you're doing. Not by when I say payoff, I don't mean financially. I mean in terms of like the social return and getting the message out of it. Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't willing to put that in, not knowing, especially when you don't know, right? If you knew 100%, oh, this will do really well, and you have most viewed documentary all the time, then maybe you would put the effort in. But when you don't know, and it's a challenge, I mean, I think it was 4 times that we had no money left, and I'd maxed out my credit cards completely, pay myself and to pay everybody. And then we offered money by sort of plant-based companies to sponsor, and we said we don't want any of that money because even though you wouldn't influence us to make a different film, people would say that you did, right? So we didn't take any of those funds, so it was challenging at times when we'd run out of money. We just kept pushing through and got it done.
I mean, you said it again. You said the people who stop are the ones that don't know that it's going to succeed. And I feel like you knew from the very beginning, no, this is...
Yeah, I think it just kept, like, Joseph and I had a very strong belief that the topic was timely, that it was relevant, that people would want to, watch this sort of thing. And then we felt if we put together a great team, and you said, like, I met the right people and sort of things, but it's not like things fell into place, right? It's like when people say luck is like when hard work meets opportunity or something. A lot of people just aren't willing to put the work in. Like if I want to get hold of someone, I'll spend 8 hours on social media seeing who follows who that I know, that or something like this to try and get hold of. If you go through management, that doesn't work too well. Get hold of, especially with a documentary, you're not paying anybody. So the management gets 10% or 20% of zero, which is zero. So going through management doesn't help you for a documentary. So you got to try and get hold of the people directly.
Yeah. Because then they meet you, they hear about the project, and then they're like, oh, that's super mission driven. Like, I really want to be a part of that. Like, this is something I believe in too. I'm sure that was like over and over again. You probably heard that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay. And then with the movie gets made, I mean, it's a phenomenal movie. I mean, everything about it, the production, the storytelling, the graphics, like the music, like still to this day, like one of the most stunning documentaries, like in terms of just technical production. And so it comes out after it was made, were you like, now let's just wait and watch and see what happens? Or did you have any like idea of how big this was going to become?
Well, that was a lot of work in itself, because when we finished it, we're like, okay, finally we're done. And then we were negotiating with Netflix, and they wanted it to be an original, but they only wanted to do like 4 educational screenings a year worldwide in schools and universities. We've since done thousands of screenings in schools and universities. So we didn't really want to go the originals route where Netflix sort of owns it.
Yeah.
And if they'd have done that, then they would have done all of the marketing. But we did a license deal with Netflix so that it could also be on iTunes, Google Play, Vimeo, Blu-ray and DVD. We're on Youku in China, which has twice as many viewers as Netflix, 800 million viewers on Youku in China. In China, there was one social media post that had 2 million likes and 1 million comments about the film from a film review critic. But yeah, so we then realized, okay, now I have to learn how to distribute and market a film as well. So Joseph and I then had to figure that out. And so that stuff doesn't happen, but everyone's seeing it doesn't happen by chance.
Right.
A lot that went into that. We did premieres in New York, LA, London that we organized. We then did 1,500 theaters around the world. We did a compressed breakout window from going from theatrical to what's called TVOD, which is transactional video on demand, which is, your iTunes, when you pay for it, pay-per-view on Amazon. And then we did what's called SVOD, which is subscription video on demand, which is Netflix and Hulu of the world, but we did Netflix there.
Whoa. Okay. I hear you. There was you distributed it in many places. And the other thing that stands out really is both when you said you had maxed out credit cards, but you didn't take funding from food companies or whoever wanted to. And here again, you were like, oh, we could do a deal with Netflix, but you wanted that level of control. This is my baby. And there's a mission to this that we're not going to have somebody else who's not mission driven, be making these decisions. Am I hearing that right?
Big part of it. And then number of eyeballs. It was really about the social return and just getting the message out there. And so we felt if it was only on Netflix, they weren't going to do free educational screenings. It wouldn't be on iTunes and Google Play and Vimeo. Right. And so we just and it wouldn't be DVD and Blu-ray. It wouldn't be perhaps in China. And so we wanted to just get the most eyeballs. And we thought that we would do a better job of that than Netflix would. While still utilizing Netflix for the subscription video on demand.
I also just want to really thank you for coming to that lifestyle medicine conference. And it wasn't just there. I know you came to Plantrition. I know it has become a powerful tool. My colleagues and I talk about how we use it. And I have my, documentary go-to for this person, like, oh, they look like someone who probably would resonate with Forks Over Knives. But most nowadays, like, this is the documentary I'm sending people. Like, it really resonates on a level, like, it's surprising. I think that's what you were going, I don't know if that's what you were going for, because it's going against so many stereotypes. It's going against all these widely, I mean, that's what you said, right? You felt like you had been lied to, and that this was, and so you had to make something so profoundly good. And there'll still be haters, because I remember after it came out, like after the conference, I came back, I was telling everyone about it, I was telling people in my gym about it. And shortly thereafter, you went on Joe Rogan. And Poe wanted to ask about this too, because we both listened to that at the time. And I think I've re-listened to it with this guy who's like an acupuncturist who, and you even said at the beginning, you're like, you probably should have gotten someone.
Well, the funny thing is, you talked about David Goldman earlier, the chief science advisor. So I didn't ask for me to go on. I asked Joe because Chris Kresser, this acupuncturist, had done a debunk. And it's funny, when I watched the debunk episode, it's a 3-hour episode, and I tried to watch it through the lens of not having read the scientific literature that I've read. And I find it quite convincing.
Right.
I go, oh, if I didn't know all the science, this sounds quite convincing. And I would think that the film would be debunked if I was sort of the average person that hadn't read the literature. And so I thought, well, I need to get on there. Well, we need to get on there and debate. I called Joe Rogan and said, hey, or I messaged him. I said, can we get David Goldman on to debate Chris Kresser? And he said, no, I want you on. I was like, well, I prefer David on because he's like the expert on our team in terms of the nutrition. And so, but then Joe said, no, it'd be better if you come on. So I tried to get, but then I said, what about David and I? Because you're all sort of on the meat side. So you're like the meathead athlete guy. And you get as an expert, and have me as the athlete. But no, I think, as you know, he said that I didn't lose a single argument against the.
That's right. You convinced him, but Joe is such in the moment that the next day he'll be convinced about something else.
Well, I think it's based on identity.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of men are insecure about their masculinity, and they feel the need to engage in so-called behaviors, and meat eating and sort of hunting and everything is sort of right there.
Well, I was a huge meat eater, James. Like, I used to go to steakhouse for my birthday, like every year. I was barbecuing like most days when I could. It was even for me, like, it was a huge change when I changed my diet. You were a big meat eater too. Like, I'm really curious, like, about the practical nature of you. And you showed up at a drive-thru in order to bean burrito because you were like, I don't know what else to get. Like,
I mean, when I first went plant-based, I really wasn't sure what to eat. I do remember talking about being a big meat eater. Before I sort of went down this journey, I remember walking to a restaurant. And I said, why is the chicken spelt funny on the wall? And I was there with my buddy Tom, who's 6'5", 265 pounds, bodybuilder. And we said, well, why is the chicken spelt funny? And they said, no, it's not real chicken. It's made from plants. I said, okay, what meat then do you have? They said, no, we don't have any meat here. I said, okay, we'll take something with eggs or, whatever. And they said, no, this is fully plant-based restaurant. We don't have any animal products. And my friend and I, Tom, looked at each other and we just walked out. We didn't even have to say anything. There was no way we were going to eat a single meal that didn't have animal products in it. So that was shortly before this whole journey.
Oh, yeah, I was the same guy. Like, if somebody, like, had a salad, with no meat in it, like if there wasn't chicken on it, I was like, oh, that's not really, okay, I guess I'll eat that. And yeah, so what you started researching in, you were like, oh, this is really good, but there's the practical nature of it too. Like, you have to enjoy it. That's why we call this show The Health Feast, because we really believe that's the key, is like, good health should feel good. It should feel indulgent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
How did you make that transition? I'm really curious.
Well, I think I didn't go like cold turkey, for lack of a better term, overnight. I started cutting out the meat, and I just started incorporating more plant-based meals. And there were just lots of things at the time like, oh, this tastes really good, actually. And then it sort of started crowding out the animals. I didn't feel like it was like, oh, I'm getting rid of the animal products. I felt it was like I'm more incorporating more plant-based foods. But my diet is pretty simple now. I'm not a very good cook. And so I'll do like lentil pasta because it's higher in protein. I'll mix some veg in it, throw a sauce on it, really easy. I'll make oatmeal. I do half oats, half lupin or lupini.
Oh, I do the same thing, James.
And we've now put that, in...
you put it in the protein. Yeah, I know.
But I've been doing that for years now because it's high. It's like 45% protein by calorie, the lupin. But it doesn't taste great by itself. So I do oats and peanut butter, banana, cherries. Yeah.
I do the same thing. I'm sorry. I do peanut butter, bananas, cherries.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Lupin and oat.
Yeah.
And I also put ginger and amla and
I put amla in it. Yeah.
I've been doing this for like 3 or 4 years. I eat the same oatmeal every day. And it's what you're describing. We eat the same oatmeal.
My by itself doesn't taste great, but with all that in it, it's one of my favorite things to eat.
Me too. Every day I eat it, James. And I tell my kids, because especially I put frozen cherry. That's the best.
Yeah.
And I say, this is so good. And my daughter says, like, you eat the same thing. How do you eat the same thing every day? And I'm like, I love it. Anyway, okay, go ahead. So yeah, you got to find things that you enjoy that are easy to put together. I hear you.
Yeah, I'm just not a person that spends a ton of time in the kitchen. So like a tofu stir fry, right? Like onions, pepper, tofu, some ginger or something. I keep it pretty simple.
Yeah, I want to ask your opinion on this because there's this whole world of like culinary medicine now. And I love it because they're introducing plant-based eating to people in a way where it's like, oh, you can eat all this delicious food. And there's a lot of people that don't really have an interest in cooking.
Right. I wish I was a better cook, honestly.
But there's a lot of other things you want to spend time doing in life. So like, I like to cook and, it takes time. Talk a little bit about the mission and the Game Changers Institute. Because I think this is so cool.
Yeah, so after the film came out, we set up a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. And the Game Changers Institute is a research, education, advocacy platform promoting plant-forward eating, is the way we like to look at it. So we're not trying to tell people, you've got to go vegan or you've got to go vegetarian. We like to say it's all or something, not all or nothing. So people aren't feeling like, oh, I either go all in or I'm failing. So just trying to encourage a shift towards more plant foods, especially whole plant foods. So, whole grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, trying to eat more of that, but not trying to tell people you don't get any benefit if you don't go 100%, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so, people you got to meet people where they're at. People are going to take their own time and go as far as they want. Some people go all the way and some people don't. So we're not trying to push veganism really as part of the Institute. But the Institute does, quite a few things. We publish some stuff in the peer-reviewed literature, which David helps with. So things like also TJ Waterfall is another. He's currently our chief nutrition scientist for the Institute. But, they've worked together on some papers with some other authors and on protein scoring, on creatine, on some of these other things. We've published in the peer-reviewed literature. The Institute's also the exclusive nutrition partner for the Green Sports Alliance, which is a large nonprofit around the greening of sports. Every major league is a member in the US, NHL, and NBA, and so forth. And so we sort of help there with the nutrition side of things. So the nonprofit's doing some stuff with the military that we've done. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff we're doing with the nonprofit just to encourage more plant-forward eating.
Amazing. And it's like exactly what I think most of us in lifestyle medicine do too, is like we encourage people to eat more plants. Like we always say, the benefit comes from eating the plants. So yeah, right. So you eat as many as you can. Is the Institute separate from the film or like?
That came from that first film, really. It was born out of that film. But
Sure.
We're doing a sequel,
right.
Game Changers 2, and that is a project of the nonprofit.
I hear you. Okay. So the sequel is, so what's the vision behind the sequel? Like what's the intention?
Yeah, the first film focused on personal health and performance, really more. Performance first, then my dad with my health aspect. And we touched on environmental aspects, but it's becoming increasingly apparent to me as I started reading more and more about, the planet and sustainability, that plant-based eating really is the crux of the really thing that can help us there, especially with methane being 86 times stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. So if we want to meet the sort of climate breakdown and mitigate the climate breakdown that's happening, even cutting out all transportation and cutting down carbon dioxide isn't going to be enough. We need to cut down the methane, from the cows. And it's not just the climate breakdown, it's the soil erosion, water pollution, and so many things to do with the planet's health. So looking more at the planetary health in the second film, but through the lens of athletes to start with, getting into more serious issues from there. So there's a segue, for example, looking at skiing with Lindsey Vonn, the gold medalist, and how the ice caps are melting. And then obviously for a sport, which isn't as important as, people's lives and jobs, but that's a sort of a segue into that. Or looking at surfing and noticing the coral reefs are being destroyed by the runoff from, growing the grains to be fed to animals. And of course, the people that don't know, obviously you're feeding, it's very inefficient, right, to feed crops to an animal and then eat the animal. And they're the middlemen, just like in the concept of the first film for protein, they're the middleman, same with calories and nutrients. And
for everything.
It's totally inefficient. So yeah, just really looking at touching on a few topics, but focused on planetary health, really.
Wait, and you did that artfully in the first movie too. You basically told these stories through the lens of an athlete, but then tied it to this larger picture of health. And as Dean Ornish said in the movie, there isn't a different diet for your best performance and diabetes. They're the same diet. So, or preventing diabetes or reversing diabetes. And there isn't a different diet for actually saving the planet. It's actually the same.
Right. In terms of health and performance, the same biological mechanisms apply, from inflammation and endothelial function and things like that. But fortunately, it's also the best diet for the planet as well.
100%. Now, what is your thought on the carnivore diet?
I think that in the short term, people can get benefits for a couple of reasons. One, it's an elimination diet, right? You could do, if you just ate potatoes, there's people that have eaten potatoes for 2 months and seen huge improvements, and that's all they've eaten. So I think anytime you cut out things that could be bothering you, then that could be beneficial. And then in terms of weight loss, there's obviously multiple mechanisms to help lose weight. One would be eating lots of fiber and plant foods, because they'd be satiating, they'd have low caloric density, they would hit your stretch receptors. But you can also have a sensory specific diet. So if you're just eating one food, I think you get pretty fed up of eating that food. And so if you're just eating meat, you're going to be pretty fed up of eating meat. So maybe you don't overeat the calories. And we know that when body weight drops, a lot of health markers improve just from that alone. But I think the benefits that people are seeing, based on the evidence, are very likely to be short-term, and they're not taking into account the long-term risks, the lack of fiber. A lot of these carnivore sort of influencers, they like to list their blood markers, but they don't, for example, they'll list their A1C, but they won't list their fasting blood glucose if they do a overnight, fast and then take a whole bunch of glucose. They won't list that. Or they'll list their HDL, but they won't list their LDL or their ApoB. So they don't want to list the markers of, that could really lead to cardiovascular disease.
Wow. So you point out a lot of interesting things. One is, they have glucose intolerance or carbohydrate intolerance because they're just never eating carbohydrates. But at the level of the muscle, there's insulin resistance.
Right. It doesn't mean they fixed anything. Hey, look, there's not much sugar in my blood. Well, yeah, because you're not putting any sugar in your body.
Right. But it's also something you said earlier, and in the movie, you say basically there's this belief that it's manly or I have to eat meat. And this is almost like the extreme case of it. It's like, I'm such a man. There's no one more manly than me. The only thing I eat is meat. I don't know. I think there's some of that. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely there's. Again, I think a lot of men, especially young men, based on the research that we did, are insecure about their masculinity. And so, yeah, they're trying to show that they're hunters, or they're trying to live. And so this naturalistic fallacy of let's live like our ancestors. Well, first of all, just because your ancestors did it doesn't mean that it was good for longevity or performance or anything else. It means there was, in a time of where you had to survive, it was enough to reproduce and raise your young, perhaps. But it doesn't mean it was good for anything else. And then also, it wasn't really the diet of most of the ancestors anyway. So, yeah, and it's like going into ketosis. I feel like that's more a state of survival and an optimal sort of thriving state. And so, we've seen people, I think there's one handle, the carnivore kid, and he had a widowmaker heart attack. Again, that's anecdotal, but you're starting to see some of those carnivore guys have heart attacks.
I've wondered, is it just a matter of time before we start to see either more examples like that or some actual research that comes out?
It's sort of funding research. Sorry to interrupt. Some of those folks are funding research, but again, they're being very careful on the markers that they look at. So they look at markers that might be favorable, and they avoid the markers that aren't. So they come out with working on studies that are going to show, oh yeah, this is great, we lost 50 pounds and fat and some of the blood markers improved, but then they're avoiding some of the ones that would actually be indicative of being problematic.
Oh, so actually, Poe, I remember a question he wanted me to ask you. So he was curious, like in UFC now, are more people eating plant-based because of the movie?
Yeah, I think definitely when I went plant-based early on in Orange County in California, some of the fighters started doing more plant-based. And then when the film came out, definitely had some of the fighters reach out looking for nutrition help and so forth. So there is, but I think it's still, obviously it's a pretty big minority.
Yeah.
Minority.
Because talk about the whole ethos of it and everything, like it's still probably not a huge, okay. So Sins also have created a protein product, which I love. And I wanted to, actually back here, right? I have both two flavors. So I use this every day. And it's pronounced FVTATA, right?
Yeah, it sounds like fighter, but it's FYTA, which is derived from the Greek word for plants.
Okay.
Got a double.
Oh, yes. Beautiful. So if you don't mind, I'll just point out why this is my favorite. And this is my favorite because I've tried not every, but most of the vegan and plant-based protein powders. I've tried many of them. I'm not going to name any of them by name. I would just shovel it down or hold my nose. Like sometimes I'd hold my nose and it would be so thick sometimes and kind of chalky. And so your protein you invented, I'm curious how you came up with this. It mixes like a dream. So like you just stir it for literally like 10 seconds and it mixes. I have two flavors, chocolate and this caramel vanilla. Both of those are amazing. I know there's like a coffee flavored one too. And just talk about the health. Like it's got all the essential amino acids. It's got, like you said, part of it is whole lupin bean. So there's really rare for a protein powder to have whole bean or whole ingredients in it. It's got monk fruit as a sweetener. It's very low in sugar. And I love it. I love it. And I make protein shakes with it, but I make ice cream, like banana and ice cream with it, like almost every day.
Yeah, people after the film came out kept reaching out and just saying, hey, what protein products do you recommend? Which means the scientifics, the film scientifics team's strict criteria at the intersection of health and performance that also tastes great and is convenient. And so with that criteria in mind, I was thinking, well, what? And there's nothing I actually like that much because the plant protein powders were chalky and gritty. The protein bars weren't that great.
Right.
So finally we thought, okay, well, we'll just...
This is why you invented your oatmeal. This is why I invented my oatmeal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I wanted to eat protein and I was like, all the stuff they sell tastes bad. So I'm going to put lupin bean in my oatmeal.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we just decided to make it. Yeah, American upcycled barley protein, which is the world's most sustainable protein per life cycle analysis, less water use, land use, pesticide use, emissions, and any other protein on the planet that's commercially available. And then we combine this. That's a sprouted ancient grain with the barley. And then we've combined that with the ancient legume, ancient bean with the whole ground lupin in there. And it's so much more soluble and it doesn't have the chalkiness and grittiness. It's got the antioxidants and the fiber coming from the whole food, which has been shown to help with health and athletic recovery. Yeah, it tastes better. We beat the two lead plant-based brands 3-1 in consumer testing, and then so from a taste, efficacy, it's got 20% more glutamine and whey protein, which has been shown to help muscle recovery potentially. And then, the taste, texture, sustainability. It's definitely feel we've created the best protein, plant or animal, on the market.
And it's now NFC.
NSF certified.
NSF certified for sport.
It was NSF certified, the regular launch tests for contaminants, pesticide residues, and all that kind of stuff. So third party tested, and then also NSF certified for sport, which means that pro athletes can take it without fear of any contaminated banned substances. So we just got certified in those two recently.
Just recently. I didn't know too much about that certification, but I looked into it and I went to the website, and there's not too many brands also that are certified. It's a pretty rigorous process from what I understand. They test like every 3 months for sport, especially.
No, NSF certified for sport is every single batch that's made.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's like $10,000 to test a batch, and so you're testing for all of the 280
Sure.
banned. I don't think we even added it to the website. I think we just announced it on social media, but I'm pretty excited about it. And then, a lot of plant proteins, or a lot of proteins in general. Well, first of all, our barley protein's coming from the US. Our lupin comes from France. Sorry, in American France. But most proteins are coming from China, and also a lot of proteins, whey-based or plant-based, have a lot of heavy metals. And so we're tested for all of those heavy metals to make sure that it's safe. So
this is amazing because I have a lot of, and not just me, like people in doctors, but lifestyle medicine doctors. We want people to get as much of the protein they can from whole foods, but there's situations, lots of situations, especially as people get older, where they're not able to eat as much, and they have higher protein needs. And we also, when people are working out a lot or they're athletes, like they have higher protein needs. And so I want to be able to point to people like, oh, take this. It has clean ingredients. It's been tested for all these things. It actually has bean in it. And it tastes great. Like, it's sort of a no-brainer. And it's like, it's not as expensive as some of the other brands out there, to be honest. Like,
I think it's like middle of the road on pricing. It's not like, it's not the lowest, but we're trying to stick with. People say, can't you make it a lower price? And well, we're not willing to compromise on the quality of the ingredients. So we could have easily bought pea and rice protein from China, and then so it makes all that much cheaper.
Right.
Or added artificial sweeteners or a bunch of sugar.
Right.
But we wanted the high quality ingredients. So yeah.
I'm super excited that you made this.
Should give people, if anyone's listening, we should give them a discount.
Yeah. We'll put a discount code when we have the episode.
We could do what
are we going to do?
HF10 or something.
Oh, yeah. We'll come up with a code. Yeah, HF10. Sure.
I can just tell my team to add that on to the...
What is that? $10 off?
10% off the first order.
Oh, 10% off the first order. Awesome. HF10. I love it. Thank you. All right. You heard it here first, Health Feast listeners. So I also just wanted to ask, what your vision for this second movie or for the future is. There's a lot in your movie that is compelling and true. And I feel like we're in this we're in this post-truth world. So you could put out this incredible movie. You have put out this incredible movie, so well researched, and then you'll get, the Chris Kesslers and all these people out there.
Yeah.
Does that motivate you even more? Like, how do you...
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's difficult with social media. And what people don't realize is there's so much influence. I mean, you've probably seen people talking poorly about seed oils and about plant-based meats. That is funded by the meat industry. So we've done a lot of research into this. You can actually follow the money. And so all these influencers are literally getting paid, looking like it's just their opinion on plant-based meats in general or seed oils in general. But that all came from the meat industry, or nearly all of it.
I believe it. A
lot of money to propagate that information, the misinformation.
The cereal companies are paying. I just read an article yesterday. The cereal companies are paying the body positivity influencers to promote Honey Nut Cheerios and sugary cereals, basically. So.
Yeah, I think you expect it when it's a particular brand, but the sort of anti-plant-based campaign that's so broad that they're sort of all the industries chipping in on to it's smart to put down seed oils, because then you can say, oh, but seed oils are in the plant-based foods. So you tangentially will talk about seed oils and then go, oh, wait a minute, that's in plant-based meats, for example. And then now so.
There is something to be said about that industry being very strategic and cunning. It's not new. They've been funding research for years and years, and they've been successful. I mean, you look at meat consumption. I mean, I don't know what sometimes I get discouraged, but that's also why, I'm doing this show. That's why you're making a sequel. I think sometimes in the midst of all this, you lose sight of the fact that like, no, there's a bigger purpose for all of this, and we just have to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd be motivating. Maybe just remind you why we're doing this, because you've got to combat. If there's all this misinformation, you need to have a louder megaphone and then give the actual information.
Yeah. I mean, you made a huge you made a huge megaphone. You knew from the beginning, I'm going to make this huge documentary. 200 million people have seen it. Let's shoot for 500 million people.
That's what we're going for on this one. Yeah.
That's it. Okay. All right. We ask usually one final question, everyone who comes to the health feast, which is, James, if you're coming to our proverbial health feast, we're having a bunch of people and you're bringing one life philosophy or mindset tip. What is James bringing to the health feast?
Well, first of all, I thought you were going to say you're going to bring one dish, and I was going to say oatmeal. But yeah, one tip. I don't know. One of the things that this is sort of not really, it's tangentially related to what I'm doing, but it's not what I'm actually doing. But the Japanese concept of ikigai, are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
But sort of, I think finding your sense of purpose and really feeling joyful in life is doing, in the sort of the intersection of that Venn diagram. If you look it up, it's IKIGAI, right? For people listeners wanting to look it up, but doing something that you really enjoy, doing something that's good for the world, doing something that you make money at. And what's the fourth one?
And doing something you're good at.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I feel like I've been doing that. I feel good about that. So I think people, should take a look at what they're doing in their life, and as much as possible try to work towards that center of those four circles. And I think that's a good guide as to sort of what you might want to be doing. To really look back and go, okay, I'm glad that I went down this path.
It's like for the external world, though, when they see someone like you, to climb up new ladders, you climbed up a lot of new ladders. You had to climb down some ladders.
Oh yeah, or pushed off. Or yeah, I think fighting probably helped a lot, because like when you've been on the bottom on the floor in the cage with millions of people watching you getting kneed in the face, and then you get
literally
back up. Yeah. So I think that helps give you a bit of drive.
How do you not have scars on your face?
I do. I have quite a few, actually.
Maybe I can't tell.
Yeah, I've got one here. I broke my nose in 2 places. And now
I've seen footage of you, like your whole face is covered in blood.
Yeah, and I got some scars, and I got a weird lump on my nose from having it broken a couple of times. But most of the things you can't see. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. 6 weeks ago, I had a neck surgery finally, and all from I fractured playing rugby, and then got worse with fighting. And I've got a few separated ribs, and yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend it, and I wouldn't want my kids to be professional fighters. That for sure.
I love the concept of ikigai, and that you are embodying that in your own life right now. Curious, like, what does that day look like? Like, what is the ikigai day? Like, are you spending some time working on the film, and then
we just started filming last week, so it's it's a balance between doing the film and then FVAT TA, and then staying in shape and doing some jiu-jitsu and looking after my kids, and it's a lot. It does feel a little overwhelming sometimes to try and take on so much, but then the rewards feel good that we've put out a great film, and interest in plant-based eating more than tripled worldwide according to metrics on Google Trends within a few weeks of the film's release. So that's feels like a good payoff for me, is getting the word out and making a difference. And you get so many people coming up thanking me for their health, or losing weight, or getting in shape, or feeling better about their actions and so forth. So you get the payoff too, right? Just sometimes you have to wait a while for that to pay off.
I had young guys. When I was in my primary care clinic, I had young guys like in their 20s. I would tell them to watch this, and it would have such an impact. Like they were like, one guy was like, I stopped drinking Coke, and I have started having like salads with my lunch, and I've, these small things, and he's working like as a mechanic. I can't describe. I'm trying to like the whole plant-based world and lifestyle medicine community, like how I just want to give you a big hug, like also because especially you did so much. You maxed out your credit cards 4 times. You had so much faith in this to create something, and you had a vision, and you executed on that vision, and you didn't compromise on that vision.
Yeah, but I also think, I appreciate that, but I also think then what you're doing is extremely valuable as well. So there's no good just having a documentary, right? We need the lifestyle medicine practitioners. We need the chefs and I think people putting out recipes.
That's
we
right.
need these companies putting out plant-based foods to make it easier to transition. So it's like we're all just playing our part, I think, in some way, and it's sort of we're all a team, heading in the same direction.
I ask because I know you have kids. How old are your kids?
10 and 14.
10 and 14. Do they eat plant-based or what's their...
My daughter's 10. She's they eat birthday cake at kids' parties sometimes.
Sure.
But other than that, she's never had eaten any meat, fish, dairy, or eggs. And then my son's 14. I think he ate a little bit when he was 1.5, before he switched. But yeah.
Okay, because you had switched kind of.
Yeah.
All right, James. You've been so generous with your time and just generous with your vision and your gift that you're giving this world. So I want to just thank you again for that. Yeah, it's really awesome to
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And again, I appreciate what you're doing, both with, practicing medicine and also with this podcast.
Yeah. Okay, Health Feast listeners, you can check us out at thehealthfeast.com. We'll see you back here next time. James, we always do our requisite fist bump to the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, boom. All right, we'll see you back here next time. Live well and rock on, everyone.
Thanks so much.